So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We're so excited to be here today for this inspiring panel with two phenomenal speakers, Angelique and Tom. Thank you for joining. I will introduce Angelique and Tom in a few minutes, but I would like to thank them for joining and to preparing this session with me. Before we get started, I just want to get some housekeeping out of the way. So if you could just close any bandwidth heavy apps to avoid any buffering during this session, that would be great. We are going to be covering some really great topics from our latest report. So if you want to find any additional content, please go check out our website, www.talkwalker.com, to find about all the reports concept that we'll develop during this meeting, this webinar. So also, we are welcoming everyone to join us in the conversation on Twitter and other social media channels. You can use the hashtag brands that feel the beat to share your thoughts and comment about the different topics we'll address today. We also open the Zoom Q&A feature and invite you to share your question there. We will answer your question at the end of the webinar. We just had the question also about recording. This session will be recorded, and the recording will be available on talkwalker.com. So let's get started. So welcome to Brands That Feel the Beat webinar organized by Talkwalker with Koros and Twitter. Whether you are gathering with friends and family or just watching from the comfort of your own home, cultural moments like the Super Bowl and award ceremonies are certainly not ignored by consumers and brands. COVID and lockdown all around the world made us realize how special, rare, and important are cultural moments. This is why we want to dedicate this session to the new era of cultural moments and how brands can use them to execute on their strategy. The next slide, I'm just going to cover some key agenda points. So first, the panel will introduce the topic of the day and discuss the new challenges for brand. Then we'll dive into example of how brands leverage cultural moments to get closer to their customers. As I said earlier, we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that this webinar is as engaging as possible. So please share your comments and questions in the Q&A box. We'll be moderating at the end of the webinar, and we're going to make sure we save time to cover everything with you at the end of this webinar. So let me introduce our fantastic speakers who join us today. First, Angelique joined Koros in 2017 and has spent 10 years building social strategy for customers ranging from tech to entertainment to food and beverage and everything in between. In recent years, she has shifted her focus to developing community management strategies and large-scale social listening and engagement programs centered around cultural moments. Welcome, Angelique. Do you want to add something to this description?
No, I think that was a great introduction. Hi, everyone. Really excited to chat with you all today. It's been really fun working with Julian and Tom. So excited to go through this presentation today.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thanks, Angelique. And then the next great panelist that we have is Tom. Tom joined the Twitter Next team in 2019 and has over 15 years experience working in the media and entertainment industry with a focus on social media marketing. Tom has worked on a number of award-winning campaigns, helping his clients execute work that has been recognized by programs such as the Clios, Shorties, and Webies. Thank you for joining us, Tom. Do you want to add something or just say hello?
Hello, excited to talk with you guys today. Cultural moments, I think, in my opinion, allow brands to do their best work and the most exciting work. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you guys today and be a part of it. So thank you.
Wonderful. And to round it out, my name is Julien Lacheret. I'm a marketing manager here at Talkwalker. I was actually on the customer side before and a Talkwalker client for 6 years before I joined the company last year. That's why I'm very excited to dive into this topic with you all today. Before we get started, I really just want to tell you a little bit about the three companies that our speakers represent today. Twitter Next is Twitter's global team of campaign and content strategy services, a brand voice consultation, and a lab of technologies, program managers, and designers. They use the world's largest focus group Twitter to create insight-led campaigns and innovative solutions for the world's biggest brands. So thank you so much for joining. Koros is the global leader in digital-first customer engagement software. Koros is the result of the merger of Lithium and Spreadfast. They build enterprise software for digital consumer service, online brand communities, and social management. And last but not least, Talkwalker. Talkwalker is the #1 consumer intelligence company and is dedicated to helping brands close the gap between brand and consumer. Talkwalker brings together market-leading social analytics and AI technology with unstructured data expertise and a global team of insight analysts and data storytellers. The first step in this conversation is to define exactly what we mean by cultural moment and what is the perimeter of this conversation. I will let Tom share some insight that will help us determine the scope of this study.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. So when we talk about cultural moments, we tend to be thinking about moments that drive attention. And in Twitter's case, that's conversation, moments that drive large levels of conversation. So these are some things that can be planned for, either because they're a recurring event that you can see on your calendar coming up and plan ahead, or because they're surprise viral moments, but they have overlaps with your brand's values. And you can be prepared to join those conversations when they happen. They're important because over the years, and especially coming out of the pandemic, what we've seen in general is that the playing field for brands to be a part of these conversations, it's become broader than you'd anticipate. So what you see here on this slide, when we asked people on Twitter, as you mentioned, sort of as we call it, the world's largest focus group, what cultural moments they think that a brand should, could, or should not tweet about. And these are things ranging from those cultural holidays to current affairs. The overwhelming results are that there are rarely any moments where brands don't have a license to be some part of that conversation. I will say, though, one thing to keep in mind is that, however, it is paramount that if you are joining one of these conversations, that topics are discussed with integrity, authenticity, and that they're also talked about consistently throughout the year. So I guess TLDR here is that, as a brand, you should look to be a part of these conversations, but you should also be doing your homework and then committing to these communities and what they're talking about as well.
Thank you, Tom. Super interesting. Angelique, how do you define cultural moments at Koros?
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to what Tom just described. And one of the things that we are talking about with our customers when we're trying to decide what type of cultural moment they want to engage with, like Tom mentioned, there's so many. It's such a broad term. It can be talking about like the Super Bowl, an award show, like a Taylor Swift album release, like it could be any of these moments. And so as a brand, like even if you're the biggest brand with the largest resources, you don't want to activate on every single cultural moment, right? You want to find the ones that fit with your brand and fit within your larger strategy. And so one of the things that I'm always taking a look at is how can we leverage social listening tools to identify the best opportunities for us? Audiences know, they know when you're engaging for something for clout, they can smell it a mile away. And so we want to make sure that we're identifying the correct moment and then identifying the correct form of engagement. So are you sending out a one-to-many? Are you replying to a public figure on Twitter? Are you creating new assets to activate on this moment? There's so many opportunities. And then we take a look at how we're going to measure success. So again, when we're looking at, does this moment fit for us? How are we going to measure success? Are we trying to improve our brand sentiment? Are we trying to build engagement? Are we trying to test and learn and figure out if a moment, like you saw on Tom's slide, there's a lot of could. There's a lot of in between where we could activate on a moment. And so are we going to test and learn and decide, like, is this moment right for us? So again, like there's so many different things that you can take a look at. And I have a little cheat sheet that our team goes through on this next slide. So should we, could we, let's not. Again, you want to take a look at the brand. Does this fit with your brand values? If it's something like a Pride, Black History Month, Juneteenth, any of these moments, like do those fit in your brand's values? How are you going to activate on them? How is it part of your larger strategy? Is there any brand risk associated with the moment? So if it's a trending moment that happens very quickly, what is the risk in potentially creating content that taps into that moment? And what value does it add to your overall strategy? So lots of things to consider. All of us have been in conversations when we're trying to convince somebody that we should be activating on a moment, or maybe we've been on the other side of the conversation. Hey, we should not be activating on this moment. Brand is always at the top of that strategy. And so that's something you can see. We have a lot of different questions that we have there that we're going through. The next is audience. So again, when we're thinking about the type of engagement that we want to use in a particular moment, are we targeting a new audience or is this part of our existing audience? If you're a music brand and you want to engage with an album release, that's your existing audience. They're excited about that moment. And if you're trying to tap into new audiences, which we're going to get to later, you just have to make sure that you're doing so authentically. And you can see here, authenticity is the last thing. And that's such a big thing for us at Khoros. And the thing that I would stress about authenticity is tap into your resources, talk to your team, get to know what their interests are, because I guarantee you, you will find an individual who is excited about that particular moment and they want to be engaged and they want to help the brand succeed in that moment. I will say, and my team's going to laugh because they know I am the team's go-to Harry Styles copywriter. If we're going to be engaging with anything related to like Harry Styles or baseball or anything like that, like the team comes to me and asks me how to engage authentically with that fan base because they know that I know how. And we've seen a lot of success with that. So I'm always tapping into my resources, making sure that I know my team can flag and say, hey, I really am excited about this moment. I want to help the brand succeed. And so I think we're going to go into a little bit of like how you can show up authentically in these different moments and how you can make sure that you are tapping into those resources.
Indeed, let's keep it real and let's see what it means for brands with a couple of examples. First, Tom, what did you see on Twitter and you want to share?
Yeah, I wanted to share this example really for three key reasons. One, it's relevant and it's recent. This happened just last month. But the other two reasons, this is an example at scale of why it's paramount that topics are discussed with authenticity. But it's also an amazing idea here that was born from a really thoughtful insight. So this past March, Francesca Lawson and Ollie Fensum, who was a couple in Manchester, they really captured the attention of Twitter during what has become a really important cultural moment, International Women's Day. So every year, as we all observe on March 8th, organizations are showing up on Twitter to share their solidarity for their female employees during International Women's Day. And while speaking up in solidarity is great, these days, what we see on Twitter is that consumers are demanding more transparency from companies who are publicly campaigning against inequities, but may be perpetuating them within the workplace. So in other words, what are you doing besides tweeting to support women on International Women's Day? So knowing this and sharing in those consumer demands, Lawson and Fensum, they created this equal pay bot. And what it is a Twitter bot that publicized the gender pay gap information of employers who were tweeting about International Women's Day. So what you see here on this slide is essentially the results and how it was executed. So when an organization tweeted on March 8th using the phrase International Women's Day in their tweet copy, the bot was then pulling their gender pay gap data from a public UK government source and sharing that information in a quote tweet with the brand's original tweet. And this method was unbiased. So whether you were the community integrated care organization there on the left, reporting equal hourly pay, or Ryanair on the right here with different data, and still had a bit of work to do. All of this was being publicized. So what we saw, if you go to the next slide, is that some companies were then trying to explain themselves up and digging themselves into bigger holes, right? Others deleted their tweets altogether, which is something at Twitter we just do not recommend. All in all, the results though here, as you can see, is it's sparking some really great conversation, some really important conversation on a holiday that's all about, solving some important problems. And then at the end of the day, on the next slide, what you'll see is the Gender Pay Gap app found itself with over 250,000 followers and a number of publications that were praising what they were doing.
Thank you, Tom. This aligned with a concept that our team came up after analyzing billions of data. This is what we do at Talkwalker, and this concept classified brands in three categories: reactive brands, brands that are the least tomorrow ready. So instead of preparing for tomorrow's challenging, they are dealing with the day-to-day. They're often reactive, only dealing with situations as they arise. And brands, in your example, brands that deleted their tweet after getting caught by the equal pay bot are most likely reactive brands. Then you have the predictive brands. Predictive brands understand today better and are able to predict situations before they arise. They are closer to their customers and know the trends that are impacting their industry and ecosystem. However, their processes can let them down. So they cannot really action this insight in real time and lose that competitive advantage. And the last category is proactive brands. Proactive brands are the closest to their customers. They're not just predicting the future, but proactively helping to shape their ecosystem for better and more commercially successful tomorrow. So we present this framework in our latest report, Shape Tomorrow, and explore the efforts needed for brands to overcome the challenges attached to each of these categories. And for us, the Super Bowl was the perfect moment to test this framework and identify reactive, predictive, and proactive brands. So as we said, we know that consumers' attention and engagement intensify during big cultural moments. For instance, during the last Super Bowl, more than 750 million users were on social platforms. And in order to organize the amount of data we received before, during, and after the Super Bowl, we created a series of 40 digital, that we call big game inside collectible cards. So on each card features findings identified through Talkwalker consumer acceleration platform and highlights key insights from social media, news, blog, forum, and a lot of different sources. And these 40 insight cards offer brands an opportunity to get closer to their customers. So the album with the 40 cards is still available on our website. I invite you to download it if you are interested. But most importantly, what we found during this work and the before and during the event is the rise of cryptocurrency commercials. So the Super Bowl was identified by crypto platform as the perfect forum to present their service to the world. Probably saw all of crypto commercial during the Super Bowl. So, and in this game, within the big game, the Coinbase commercial smashed the competition. I don't know if you were like me when I watched Super Bowl, but I fell off my chair when I saw this ad. I was like, what's happening? Is my TV broken or what's happening? I have no idea, but it was fantastic. And obviously everybody talked about this campaign and this ad. And we measure 130,000 results and 850,000 engagement around this Coinbase ad during Super Bowl. So we will remember this ad for a long time. So simple ID, they use a QR code to drive traffic to their platform. Coinbase respected their DNA, no commercial talk, no sales pitch, straight to the point, just driving people to their platform. Unfortunately, what they didn't forecast is the traffic and their app crashed, meaning they drove tons of traffic to their app and their website, but their system, their infrastructure let them down. And the negative sentiment took over with more than 25% negative sentiment. So if we compare with other crypto commercial, it's more around, yes, less than probably 10% negative sentiment, but Coinbase was at 23, sorry, not 25, 23. So the campaign, the concept of the commercial was fantastic, but the technical structure of the platform let the company down. This shows that everybody needs to be on board. All employees must be aware of what's coming and execute accordingly. According to our framework, remember, reactive, predictive, proactive, this made Coinbase a predictive brand. As per our definition, a predictive brand means that Coinbase understands today better. They knew what was right to do and the concept was fantastic. They know the trends that are impacting the industry and ecosystem. However, their processes let them down, so they cannot really action this insight in a real time and they lose that competitive advantage. Ultimately, I think this wraps up perfectly this first part. Ultimately, a company will always be judged by consumer on what the core product delivered. No more, no less. I propose we go to the next part, the second part of this webinar about the power of fandoms and why brands need them. Whether it's a sports event, an award ceremony, the release of a movie, an album, the cornerstone of all of these moments are the fans. As a brand, anticipating fan expectation and behavior is being more predictive is essential. We studied what happened during the Grammys, and we saw that Louis Vuitton was one of the most mentioned brands, but not because they spent millions of dollars in commercial, because there were no Louis Vuitton commercial ads during the event, or not even a post on Louis Vuitton social media pages. Tracking the event on Talkwalker, we immediately noticed that Louis Vuitton was one of the most mentioned brands during the ceremony because the brand dressed the boy band BTS, and the fan went crazy about it. As you can see on the right, all the posts are mostly fans posts on social media. Angelique, at Koros, I know you provide services to brands. How do you manage fans and fandoms?
Yeah, so that's honestly one of my favorite parts of my day-to-day work is finding new opportunities to engage with fans. I think that a lot of times it can be overlooked. A lot of times we're focusing on bigger things, and sometimes, we're not really tapping into these fans and becoming a part of the conversation. And I think too, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times when brands are trying to tap into that conversation, they're not necessarily doing it in the most authentic way. And so it can kind of provide a negative experience. So this is something that my team and I focus on with our customers is how do we show up authentically? And I think a lot of what we've talked about thus far have been these really big moments, right? And these really high profile sort of engagements, but something that we have started focusing on with some of our customers are these one-to-one engagements with some of these smaller moments. And when I say smaller, I mean like these things are still trending on Twitter and they're massive conversations, but looking at it on a more one-to-one basis. So back with Harry Styles, we had a customer who we were thinking about potentially activating on his album release announcement. It was a big deal. And so we saw a couple of different brands engaging, and this was something that was really fun for us to see and really fun for us to kind of get validation in the strategies that we've been looking at over the past few years. So the first thing that we always recommend when you're going to be engaging with a fandom or potentially activating on a fan moment is make sure that you've already built a rapport. And this can be over, a sense of time. But one of the things that we've noticed is when brands just jump in, and when, like I said, they can tell a mile away if you're just jumping in because you're trying to get engagement numbers. We've seen it with BTS. Fans have called out, they're just trying to tap into us because they know that we'll drive up their numbers. Like we've seen it. And so when you build a rapport, that really helps to sort of sway that sentiment a little bit more positively. So this was Crumble Cookies. They were actually a little bit later to engage with this moment. And when I say later, it was maybe a couple hours later, but you can't really tell on this photo, but they photoshopped a box of Crumble Cookies onto the album cover photo. And they had an existing rapport with fans. They had a watermelon sugar cookie that they had talked about in the last couple of years. And they were engaging with the fans in the comments, kind of hinting like, are they going to drop another like Harry Styles themed cookie? And the fans ate it up. They loved it. I saw TikToks of fans like, look what Crumble Cookies did. And so the ROI on doing something really simple like this, you send it to your creative team, hey, can you Photoshop a box of cookies onto this album cover and send it through? They saw a really good return from that. So definitely recommend building a rapport. And as you saw with Crumble Cookies and here in the middle with HGTV, customizing the engagement is really important as well. You don't want to go in with a generic piece of copy or a generic piece of creative because it is going to seem like it was just like, oh, we see this trending, we want to activate it on it really quickly. The name of the album was Harry's House. The HGTV saw the opportunity to jump into the conversation, and all of the fans, yes, we stand HGTV. They were so excited to see it. And so again, like it was something very simple. They customized it and it performed really, really well. And so when you're not building a rapport, you're not necessarily customizing the engagement. One of the things, and when you're in the test and learn phase, like give it a shot and see how the fans react, but you need to be prepared for all different types of responses. So like I mentioned earlier, I've seen tweets of BTS fans calling out brands because they know if they tweet a purple heart, BTS fans are going to catch on and they're going to like drive up that engagement. So what we saw in this moment with Walgreens was they just posted, "We are unwell," pretty generic sort of lingo that you would expect from a brand. And the fans were not necessarily as receptive to it as they would have been to the other brands. So again, there's always things to learn from here. And this is something like, even with the brands that I've worked with, we've tried doing like simple text messages like that, and they just didn't work. And so we had to learn, sometimes the hard way, how to engage with these fandoms and how to build that relationship with them for potentially like what you saw with like Louis Vuitton, like you could potentially turn that into a larger partnership with your brand, but starting small is okay and definitely recommended from our POV. And I know, Tom, you had a larger activation with fans that actually performed really, really well. So I want to let you chat about that.
Thanks. I love those examples. I love too, like, you know, thinking about like your testing and learning and how much you're committing to a moment, like that on Twitter, that can start with as simple as like liking specific tweets. It doesn't have to be about like tweeting or you know, creating a net new assets for a moment. It's like there are lightweight ways that you can start, you know, testing and learning with those audience that I think are worth trying out if you think there's a moment that your brand should be a part of. But I digress here. You know, when prepping for larger events, one of the things that we do is we go back and we look at the conversation data, and we find that is often a cheat code for uncovering certain, you know, barriers or insights that can really help make, you know, recurring moments bigger and better and more impactful with fans year over year. So this is the process that we use in the past years when partnering with MTV around the VMAs. How do you take an already iconic award show and make it even bigger? So what you're seeing here are the observations. So the team started by looking at how much people had been talking about the award show over the last year. And what the team found is that there were about 1 million tweets about the VMAs that came from the continental US, which is a good number. For perspective, it's about double what we see for the Emmys. But when the team zoomed out, they found something that was much more wildly compelling, and that was that there were actually 12 million tweets that were being sent from outside of the US, in addition to the 1 million that were within the US. Digging a little bit further is when things got even more interesting, which was when you layered in language data and added that to the mix of 13 million tweets. What we saw is that since 2019, non-English tweets were outpacing English tweets, accounting for as much as 65% of the conversation in 2020. So what we found here is there was not just an obstacle, but an opportunity. That location had not been a barrier for engagement, but rather language might have been, right? And so that is what prompted the creation of what is known as the VMA Stand Mail. It was a first of its kind activation designed to connect artists and fans in a new way, no matter what language anybody had spoken. So how this came to life, if you go to the next slide, MTV created history from the very first CTA here, which asked fans to submit their tweets to be sent to their favorite artist, but they told fans that they could reply in any language. So not only that, they created additional CTAs, not just in English, but also in Spanish and Portuguese, which, looking at the prior year's language, these were the top 3 language used by fans when they were tweeting about the VMAs. So instantly what we saw as replies from fans came pouring in from all over the world, about 10,000 tweets, spanning over 38 different languages, which is pretty remarkable. So what happened next? On the next slide, on site at the event, the artists who were attending the event were invited to step inside the stand mail space, where they were surrounded by these same tweets from fans being sent from all over the world. As you can see here in this visual, the tweets were then automatically translated from the fan's native language to the artist's native language in real time, right in front of their eyes. This whole experience was then captured, and the content was then tweeted back out from the VMA handles in multiple languages. So the content was also trimmed down and sent back to the original tweeters as well. And as you can see here, the reactions just really special in general. So it was really cool to see that. you see these interactions between Chloe and Legos here. Not only is this extremely impactful for the fans who get to be a part of this moment, but other fans who get to see that, anybody is getting a chance to speak with their favorite artists. Like, it's pretty remarkable and pretty powerful. So definitely a superpower there of Twitter that everyone was able to lean into here.
Yeah, I love these responses. I think these are so fun. And these are the things that you want to see as a social team. You want to see people react to your engagements this way. And I think once you are sort of in it with the fandoms, they look for you. We've had people comment for our customers say, hey, we were waiting for your comment. They knew we were coming. They knew we were going to comment on an engagement. So it's really fun to see. And then they share this with their audiences as well. So this is really cool. I really like this.
Yeah, in general, brands are in a great position to uplift fans. And, in the VMA's case here, MTV's case, a direct line to our favorite artists. For them to be able to step in and sort of provide this service and connecting them with fans with their favorite artists, it's pretty remarkable and it's pretty powerful, and people really, really appreciate it and like being a part of these things.
That's a very, very powerful example. Thanks, Tom, for sharing. I just want to take a minute here because we saw a lot of example. And I think I would love to hear your thought on how do you execute on your strategy? What is your recommendation? Do you have a framework for that? So Tom, how do you do that at Twitter?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been kind of, speaking to it. We haven't really directly talked about it yet, but when you're ideating for a big moment, Twitter Next has a framework. We're a global team, so we kind of needed a structure that we could all abide by. And so this OUI structure is something that we came up with that we use across the globe. So when ideating for a big moment, what we do is we start first with the observation around this moment. So observe the audience conversation. What is standing out? What is interesting? So for International Women's Day, for example, right? It could be observing that a lot of brands are tweeting about the day. What are they saying? What are they not saying? Right? Then coming from that, what is the unexpected truth or the tension about the conversation that you can address? So again, for MTV, language being that barrier that potentially was prohibiting fans from feeling seen and connecting that event. And that gets you to this third area, this insight, this place where you can ideate and come up with the idea, work with your team, schedule brainstorms to solve those problems or to find a way to contribute something new. So this is sort of that 3-step framework that our teams go through when ideating around a big moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's for us at Talkwalker, the key concept of what we call the consumer closeness. And the language in the VMA's example is a great example of that, is how do you make the people who are talking, the people that are listening and interacting closer together. And I think translating and making sure that the language is the same is super important. And yeah, the question is how you connect your brand to your customer across a range of issues. Issues can be the language, location, and all of that. So this is a very powerful concept, and this is what we really work on is how to reduce to close the gap between the brand and the consumers. So we are in line, and I think we share the same mindset on that. And Angelique, at Koros, what are the keys to success for you?
Yeah, so I think the keys to success for us are, first, we take a look at the larger brand strategy and try to figure out when we want to tie in cultural moments, again, what makes the most sense. There are a lot of brands jumping into cultural moments right now because they see the value in engaging with their customers in that way. But one thing, and I always tie it back to the authenticity element of it. If you're not authentically engaging with these moments, it's not going to work for you. And so that is something that I always kind of root it back to, is in the overall brand strategy and our values and our beliefs. How do these moments tie in, and how can we show up during these moments? And I think that's, it's trying to come up with that priority, trying to make sure that you can prioritize the brand first, and then these engagements and these moments and how they tie in. So That's kind of the way we look at it. And I think one of the things that we've had to kind of talk about as a team is like, how do we kind of get messy and how do we test and learn and figure out what works for us? Like, we weren't having success right away. It took us a lot of time. And so I think, you know, setting that expectation and like kind of setting those smaller goals for yourselves, like we want to try to engage in X amount of cultural moments, and here's why, and here's the way that we want to do it. That's definitely what my recommendation would be for brands that are taking a look and wanting to be more proactive about engaging with these moments. Perfect,
thank you. Yeah, I agree. Before we go to the Q&A section, Tom, Angelique, do you want to say a word to wrap up this presentation? Tom or Angelique?
Yes, I would just say, get out there, you know, take a look at these audiences, these conversations that you think you want to be a part of, you know, start, you know, liking some tweets, seeing what fans you can interact with, and start doing some testing and learning. And, you know, you'll find the areas where you can be really impactful as a brand and also just have a lot of fun. So.
Thank you. Angelique, a last word? Well, we can also go to the Q&A.
Yeah, no, I agree with Tom. I was telling my team the other day, like my first social job that I had at my first job was natively scrolling through Twitter and looking for, you know, cool tidbits to share with our on-air talent. And so the fact that like it's now grown to be this massive element of social strategy is really exciting for me. And like little me 10 years ago, just natively scrolling through Twitter would have been like, oh, wow, this is kind of fun.
It is.
There's probably a lot of us that share that same background, Angelique. I would just say, you know, after working at Twitter for a few years and having to, you know, mine for observations and insights, that the Twitter search, the advanced search, was something that I don't know if you use it, but just something I had never really used until I started working here. And it's an extremely valuable tool. So if, you know, you're a community manager or someone, you know, responsible for helping find insights to ideate around, go play around with the advanced search tool, because it's really extremely valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a very, very good advice. And I would say, yeah, and then to promote Talkwalker, you can start with the Twitter advanced tool and then go for test our social intelligence product. But yes, I agree. I spent so much time on Twitter, and I started with the you know, the operand and the fact that you can search, you know, typing search and you know, with the handle. So yeah, I agree. I spent a lot of time on that too. So let's move to the question. I'm gonna read some of it. So first question from Pierre: have tools been developed to scroll through TikTok for any commentary with video or for other platform? So it's a very good question. I'm gonna take this one about TikTok. So Talkwalker provide Talkwalker scroll TikTok and can provide you tons of information about what's happening there. It can go into videos, all the comments. So yes, Talkwalker can do that. So yeah, I think I don't know if Angelique or Tom, you want to add anything about TikTok? I know that obviously there is a lot of conversation about it, but yes, I'm happy to tell that yes, Talkwalker enable TikTok scrolling, and we can dig into all the data that are there.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
I
was going to jump in. I said for our team, I mean, we definitely found a ton of value in doing some social listening on TikTok. I think to start, we started doing it manually and have been trying to figure out ways to manage that conversation. So I definitely think if you have team members who are very privy and want to be on TikTok and want to find insights there, like I absolutely recommend finding ways to do social listening on that platform and then cross-referencing with the social listening that you're seeing on Twitter, on Instagram, on other platforms, because the conversation will be different. The way that fans are talking about moments will be different. And honestly, that's going to help you be more authentic with your engagement as well. So I know that there are still a lot of tools rolling out with TikTok API so that you can do social listening on that platform. But I do think if you have the resources available to be able to use that platform for insights, I would highly recommend it.
Thank you, Angelique. I think there's a question for you. Is how do you prepare for all types of response? I think when we talk about Walgreens, one of your tip and recommendation is to be ready for all types of response. So how do you prepare for all type of response?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think partially it depends on your brand voice. So I feel like if your brand voice is a little bit more cheeky, a little bit more fun, you can try to respond to some negativity. Like you can see like they were kind of making jokes, kind of poking fun at Walgreens. If Walgreens had historically had like a very cheeky tone of voice, they could then come back and be like, please just let me have fun, or they could say something kind of silly like that. But I think if you are sort of in that beginning of test and learns, just kind of letting the fans react to your response and then using that to inform your next activation, I think that that's really helpful. I know that there's always sort of this desire to like jump back in and kind of defend yourself. But, at the same time, like it's a test and learn. You're trying to have fun. You're trying to engage with these fans. And they will call you out. So I definitely recommend kind of taking a step back and be like, is this worth responding to? Is it not? And then in terms of planning for larger moments, so our team like does a lot of social listening. We have a massive calendar where we're tracking different cultural moments, anything from, like a different like celebration month, or is it like Mother's Day, or, like a Harry Styles album, Taylor Swift album, whatever. We track all of that so that we know that that's coming up, and we kind of start doing more social listening around those moments. How are people talking about it? How can we prepare? So I definitely recommend, like, if you have the resources to do that, to give that a shot. But yeah, you're going to get all different types of responses. And I think just kind of observing, like Tom was talking about earlier, observing and then developing an insight and action from there. That's kind of the way that we go about it with our team.
Yeah, talking about that, Tom, you showed the example of the equal pay gap and how brands responded. So I think it's a question also for you, is how can you answer to that if you get called out by a bot or another tweet. I think it's important if you can share some of your recommendations.
You're muted, Tom, if you're talking. Just heads up.
Sorry. I think, it's all about like starting with authenticity from the beginning. So, if you're going to be joining a conversation, being fully as transparent as possible, because consumers they're keeping the receipts. If you've done something or said something in the past, like even if you deleted tweets, they have screenshots and they know, what you said, they've been following you all along. So just being prepared to answer and interact with, the best intentions and being honest. I think that's sort of what you have to lead with. And, if you're a brand that's going to be on social today, and just use that as your North Star in everything you're doing, whether it's joining the conversation or, direct one-on-one engagement.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, that's true. We have another question about the difference between Khoros and Talkwalker. It's a very good question, and I think I'm gonna take this one, and Angelique, you can add your comment as well. I think Khoros and Talkwalker works very well together, if it makes sense. Talkwalker is a very powerful tool for getting consumers intelligence with our social intelligence product, with our market intelligence product, with our customer intelligence product. You can get a very accurate vision of what's happening for your brand, how your customers talk about you, react to your product, to get good ideas of in which direction you're supposed to go to innovate. And I believe Koros is a good partner for going further. I mean, in terms of campaign creation, to help you, work on this kind of big cultural moments in, ideation, content creation, and all of that. Angelique, I don't know how do you see that? Obviously, I don't know Koros as well as you do, but yeah, I believe both Twitter and Koros work very well together.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like with the Khoros platform, we have our social listening tools and we have our community management tools. And so what my team focuses on sort of on the strategic services side is the one-to-one engagements. So we take the, recommendations and the things, the insights that we're seeing from social listening, and then applying them to our community management strategies as well. So that's something that I think has been really valuable for using the platform and finding ways to engage with audiences, not only just with these larger moments, but in the one-to-one engagements as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Angelique. We have a question about the recording. And yes, I confirm that the recording will be available after the session. So if you want to watch again, share the recording with your friends, colleagues. It will be the recording will be available on Talkwalker website after the session. I'm not sure we have more questions. Let me check in the chat. A lot of great and positive comments. So I'm very happy about that. Okay. And yeah, so another question about the deck, and yes, I confirm it will be shared. I'm not sure we have more questions. Tom and Angelique, do you want a last word about this session?
I mean, well, thank you all so much for the nice nice messages in the chat. I'm really glad that y'all found this so helpful. And yeah, like Tom said earlier, like just give it a shot, just test and learn, just jump in there. Like that is the way to sort of, really become a part of the conversation during these cultural moments in a really positive way. So I think as long as you have a team who's willing to jump in and test and learn and just give it a shot, like go for it.
If I may say one thing is, we sometimes brands sometimes are a little bit scared to go and use these cultural moments because they think it's going to be a crowded arena, and it's going to be a very crowded space and everybody's going to try to use it. And I think what is very important is to find a good concept and something that is a little bit different. And as we said, we talk a lot about authenticity, and I believe looking inward is very important to know what the brand can offer that is different from other people. And I think it's really not trying to copy other people or do the same commercial or do the same activation. And I think it's really what makes the brand different and how this relate to this these big events. And yeah, sometimes it's not going just measuring and observing will tell the brand it's not a good time to go. But if it's a good time to go, and if the brand has something different to say, I think it's brands shouldn't be scared to use these big moments. So this was my conclusion. Thank you so much, Angelique. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining. It was a pleasure to host this webinar. I invite you to share your feedback on Twitter, #brand_that_feel_the_beat. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. You Tom, Angelique, you shared amazing example. I wish you the best at Koros and Twitter for the future. And yeah, have all a great day. And I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank y'all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.